Hi everyone, my name is Sean Andersen and I am a third year medical student here at UNLV's Kirk Kerkorian School of Medicine, and I will be doing a presentation on the interplay between mental health, relationships, and study location and their effects on academic performance in medical students during COVID-19. So just to give you guys a little bit of a background, I am part of the class of 2024, and so I came into medical school during 2020, which is exactly when the COVID-19 pandemic started. This was very difficult because in general, starting medical school is very stressful. It's very, life-changing. You go through a lot of transitions, and now we're doing this in a world where, schools are changing from in-person lecture to online learning. The faculty was still figuring it out. And this was, again, all happening while we still need to figure out how to be effective medical students. And so, again, there's a rapid shift to online learning. We didn't really get to know each other. We didn't get to know our faculty. And it was just a very difficult experience. And the faculty started to notice that compared to previous cohorts, my class had lower exam scores. And this was just kind of something we noticed. They weren't exactly looking at the exam scores yet, but it seemed like more students were failing. They just weren't doing as well. And so they started to get a little bit curious. And we decided to do a study looking at if COVID-19 had some sort of impact on academic performance, as well as a couple other metrics, including mental health, which I'll go into along this presentation. So what we decided to do was we sent a survey out to first, second, and third year medical students, asking them to reflect on their experiences during their first semester of medical school. So for the second years and third year students, they had to reflect back on when they were first year students, first coming in during their first semester. And we sent them a survey and we asked questions to explore, where they were studying, their ratings of their mental health during that time, their ratings of their relationships with other students and their faculty, and we also decided we wanted to again look at exam scores because this was kind of what prompted us to this study. So what we did was we collected the first 5 exams from the first semester of medical school for the first year students, second year students, and third year students, and we take these exams that are kind of standardized across the nation. They're called NBME exams, which is the National Board of Medical Examiners. So in order to standardize, the exams, just in case there were different questions, we marked that if you passed an exam, it was a 1, and if you failed an exam, it was coded as a 0. And so the averages for each student's 5 exams was obtained, and then for the entire cohort, their scores were averaged. And so here we're going to discuss some of the results that we found, which the first one being there was a significant difference in academic performance between the first year medical students who started during COVID-19 and the second and third year students who started their first year, without COVID-19, being a thing. And this was a very significant difference in exam performance. And this is what we had expected to find. And, we noticed a lot of other things based on the survey results as well. So the COVID cohort spent much more time, as you can see on the blue line, studying at home compared to the non-COVID cohorts. And this is intuitive. We were doing remote learning. There was quarantines and shutdowns in place. And so we were spending a lot more time at home. And it's evident here with the survey. We also found that the COVID cohort spent much more time staying alone, again, with the quarantines and isolations. This was an expected finding. What we also found was that there were significant differences in relationship ratings to other students and faculty. And a lot of this is because, as first year students coming in during the COVID-19 pandemic, we weren't able to interact with other students and faculty the same way that students who came into medical school, in person were able to. And this is something we all felt anecdotally. We felt like we didn't really know our faculty. We didn't know them by name, by face. And we didn't get to know each other as well. It's not like we're coming to class together and interacting and studying together in the library like previous cohorts, which is a very big part of medical school. We just weren't doing that, and it's very evident here, as you guys can see on the ratings that we had gotten from the survey. What was slightly different, although not significant, was that there were differences in mental health ratings. Again, this wasn't a significant finding. However, the COVID cohort did trend a little bit lower on their mental health ratings, and mental health was something that was explored in a lot of other studies, especially when it came to shutdowns during the COVID-19 pandemic. we decided to take this a step further and determine, okay, are these things that we found related to each other? So we decided to run correlations between the variables, and we have bolded these significant correlations that we found, and we found that academic performance was correlated with the percentage of time spent studying at home, mental health ratings, and your relationship ratings to other students, and we'll kind of dive into this a little bit more in the next few slides. So, like I said, academic performance was correlated with study location, and the way that we broke it up into this bar graph, so it's a little bit easier to kind of understand, is that students who studied at home less than 70% of the time scored better on their exams, meaning that students who spent more time studying at home, more than 70% of their time studying at home, actually scored worse on their exams, which points to the fact that, there might be some merit in studying on campus, around other students, and where you can, talk to faculty rather than being just stuck at home trying to study. There's a lot of development that happens in the beginning of medical school, especially when you're trying to learn how to study. And, if you're at home trying to figure it out on your own and you don't get to kind of talk to other students and see what they're doing that's effective, we think that this is something that, contributed to the decrease in academic performance. Another thing that we had noticed was that academic performance and mental health were correlated. So students who rated their mental health ratings higher had better performance on their exams, and students who had lower mental health ratings scored worse on their exams. And then the last correlation that we had seen in this was that students who felt like they got to know other students better scored better on their exams as well. And that goes back to the point that I mentioned earlier where, when students are interacting, they're really helping each other and trying to find different methods of learning and studying and all that kind of stuff. And that was heavily affected with COVID-19 and the shutdowns. Now, we also decided to run a couple correlations on mental health, and like the previous table, we have bolded the correlations that we found, and like we already kind of explored, NBME performance was correlated with mental health, but relationship to faculty and relationship to students were also correlated with mental health as well, meaning that students who felt like they had better mental health or better relationships with their faculty members and other students had overall better mental health rates. So let's talk about a couple takeaways from the study. First off, this study found that there was a significant difference in academic performance comparing the COVID and pre-COVID cohorts. Furthermore, we also found that the COVID cohort spent more time studying at home and they had weaker relationships with their classmates and faculty, and on average, though not significant, they reported worse mental health ratings. Furthermore, academic performance is correlated with mental health, study location, and the relationships that students have with other students. So going forward, and I think some of the takeaway points from this study is that if a school is considering remote learning, past the COVID-19 pandemic and just in general, because we did find that some schools did like, doing online learning, in terms of not having to have faculty show up. It was easier to just use pre-recorded lectures. Whatever the reason that a school might want to consider doing this is, they should be encouraging students to interact in some way. Allowing students to get to know each other is shown to be important for both mental health as well as academic performance. Getting to know each other, make those friends, learn study strategy from each other. Those are positively correlated with academic performance. And if you're going to consider switching to a remote learning format, these are things that should be prioritized and made something that students can do. Just because you're doing online learning doesn't mean you can't host maybe like some in-person socials or any of those kinds of things. And this kind of branches off to the next point as well, where students need to also be interacting with faculty, whether it's more office hours, more faculty meet and greets, or coffee times, whatever it may be. Students getting to know their faculty members is very important for mental health, and I think also just like feeling that you're part of the program. Mental health evaluations, especially in the setting of isolated learning, is going to be very important, making sure that students are doing well and that their mental health is being followed up on, whether it's through services, whether it's through counseling. Just having that constant follow-up with your students, even if you're doing remote learning, is going to be very important. And then the last point we wanted to make is encouraging outside study environments. Even if you're doing online learning, encouraging students to come to the library and study there together, and not just study at home, stuck at home, where they're not interacting with other people, or they're just self-isolated. These are things that may be important factors in making sure that academic performance is maintained in the setting of remote learning.